There are some debts that can be paid with money, and then there are debts that can cost you your freedom. Dr. Rebecca Hart never imagined that one phone call would drag her into a world of fear, power, and forbidden love. It was almost midnight when Rebecca received the call. "Your brother is in serious trouble," the stranger said. Rebecca froze. "Who are you?" "You don't need to know my name. You only need to understand this Marcus owes the wrong people a lot of money." Her heart dropped. Marcus had always been reckless, but she never imagined he had gambled himself into a debt so enormous that dangerous people would come looking for him. "How much?" There was a long silence. "Enough to get him killed." The next morning, Rebecca found herself standing inside a luxurious mansion, surrounded by armed men. At the end of the enormous living room stood Choi Kwang. Everyone in the city knew his name. He was a ruthless mafia boss feared even by men who carried guns for a living. His cold eyes settled on Rebecca. "You're the doctor." "Yes. You know why you're here?" Rebecca swallowed. "To treat your mother." Kwang stepped closer. "My mother has been unconscious for 6 months. If you wake her up, your brother's debt disappears." Rebecca stared at him. "And if I fail?" Kwang's expression didn't change. "Then we discuss another way for your brother to pay." Rebecca knew exactly what that meant. She had just entered Choi Kwang's world. Rebecca had treated difficult patients before, but nothing prepared her for treating Choi Mina. The older woman lay motionless in a private bedroom, surrounded by medical equipment. Her eyes remained closed, her breathing supported by machines, while several monitors quietly recorded every fragile heartbeat. Rebecca examined the charts carefully. "She has been in a coma for 6 months, one of the nurses explained. Rebecca nodded. "I can see that, but I need her complete medical history." "You'll get everything." Rebecca turned and found Kwang standing at the doorway. She looked directly at him. "I also need complete control over her treatment." Kwang raised an eyebrow. "You're making demands. I'm telling you what I need to save your mother." For a moment, the room became completely silent. The guards exchanged nervous glances. Nobody spoke to Kwang that way. But instead of becoming angry, Kwang simply said, "You have it." Rebecca was surprised. From that moment, she began working tirelessly. She adjusted Mina's medications, monitored her vital signs, studied old test results, and searched for anything the previous doctors might have missed. But there was one problem. Rebecca wasn't allowed to leave the mansion. Her room was beautiful, the food was excellent, and everything she needed was provided. Yet she was still a prisoner. Every evening, Kwang would appear briefly at his mother's door. He rarely spoke. He would simply stand there, staring at Mina. Rebecca began noticing something strange. The terrifying mafia boss everyone feared seemed completely different whenever he looked at his mother. One night, Rebecca asked, "You really love her, don't you?" Kwang looked at her. "She is the only person who ever loved me before she knew what I would become." Rebecca didn't know what to say. For the first time, she wondered what had happened to the man behind the ruthless reputation. Rebecca soon realized that working for Choi Kwang came with one dangerous rule: never ask questions about his business. But the more time she spent inside the mansion, the more curious she became. One evening, she found Kwang sitting alone in the dining room. His jacket was off, and for once, he didn't look like the powerful man everyone feared. He looked exhausted. "You haven't eaten," Rebecca said. Kwang looked up. "I'm not hungry." "You've been saying that for 3 days. A faint smile appeared on his face. "You keep counting." "I'm your mother's doctor. It's my job to notice things." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Kwang asked, "Why did you become a doctor?" Rebecca smiled softly. "My father died when I was young. A doctor tried everything to save him. He couldn't, but watching him fight for my father changed my life." Kwang lowered his eyes. "My mother was the person who taught me to fight." Rebecca looked at him differently. She was beginning to understand that beneath the cold exterior was a son terrified of losing the woman who had raised him. Days turned into weeks. Rebecca's dedication never changed, and slowly Mina's condition began to improve. One night, while checking her monitors, Rebecca noticed something unusual. "Mina!" Her fingers had moved. Rebecca's heart raced. She immediately called the medical team. Kwang rushed into the room. "What's happening?" Rebecca looked at him. "I think your mother is responding." For the first time, Rebecca saw something she had never seen in Kwang's eyes: hope. And neither of them realized that this tiny movement would soon change everything. But before we continue, if you're enjoying Rebecca and Kwang's story, Subscribe to Koriafrik Stories and turn on your notifications, because the deeper Rebecca enters Kwang's world, the more dangerous their love becomes. The news that Mina had moved her fingers changed everything inside the mansion. For the first time in 6 months, Kwang allowed himself to believe that his mother might wake up. Rebecca worked harder than ever, spending long hours beside Mina's bed. But something else was changing too. Rebecca and Kwang were becoming closer. Their conversations lasted longer. They began talking about their lives, their fears, and the people they had lost. One rainy evening, Rebecca found Kwang standing alone by the window. "You should be sleeping," she said. "So should you?" Rebecca smiled. "I have a patient to worry about." Kwang looked at her. "You always worry about everyone. And you don't. I only worry about one person." Rebecca knew he meant his mother, but the way he looked at her made her wonder if he was beginning to mean someone else. Kwang stepped closer. "You should stay away from me, Rebecca." "Why?" "Because people close to me always get hurt." Rebecca stared into his eyes. "Maybe I'm not afraid of you." For a moment, neither moved. Then Kwang gently reached for her hand. Before anything could happen, a nurse suddenly called Rebecca from Mina's room. Rebecca hurried away. Kwang remained standing there, watching her disappear. The following morning, Rebecca noticed Mina's fingers moving again. She leaned closer. "Mina!" The older woman's eyes slowly opened. Rebecca froze. After 6 months of silence, Choi Mina was awake. Kwang rushed into the room. When Mina whispered his name, the feared Mafia boss broke down in tears. Rebecca watched silently. She knew what this meant. Her promise was fulfilled. She was finally free. And she had no idea that Kwang was about to ask her to stay. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe to Koriafrik Stories because the hardest part of Rebecca and Kwang's journey is only beginning. Rebecca packed her belongings that evening. For the first time since she entered the mansion, she could leave without anyone stopping her. Marcus's debt was gone. Mina was awake. Her promise had been fulfilled. Yet as Rebecca closed her suitcase, she felt a strange emptiness in her chest. A knock came at the door. It was Kwang. "You're leaving?" It wasn't a question. Rebecca nodded. "Yes. Your mother is awake. There's nothing keeping me here anymore." Kwang stared at her suitcase. "I know. Then why do you look angry?" "Because I don't want you to leave." Rebecca's heart skipped. "Kwang, I know why you came here," he said. "You came because you had no choice. You came to save your brother." He stepped closer. "But I'm not asking you to stay because of his debt." Rebecca looked confused. "Then why?" Kwang's voice softened. "Because I fell in love with you." Rebecca couldn't speak. The man she once feared was standing before her, asking for something he couldn't command. But Rebecca shook her head. "You can't ask me to stay in a place where I was brought against my will." Kwang immediately stepped back. "You're right." There was no threat in his voice. "If you want to leave, I'll let you go." Rebecca looked at him. For the first time, she understood that Kwang was giving her something she had never had since arriving there. A choice. And somehow, that choice made leaving much harder. If you're enjoying Rebecca and Kwang's journey, subscribe to Koriafrik Stories and stay with us. Because the decision Rebecca makes next will change both their lives forever. Rebecca spent the entire night thinking. She could leave. She was finally free. No debt, no contract, no guards standing outside her door. She could return to America and forget everything that had happened. But every time she imagined leaving, she remembered Kwang, not the ruthless man everyone feared. She remembered the man who sat beside his mother's bed when he thought nobody was watching. The man who listened when she spoke. The man who had given her freedom even though it meant losing her. The next morning, Rebecca found him in the garden. "I've made my decision," she said. Kwang turned slowly. "Where are you going?" Rebecca walked closer. "I'm staying." Kwang stared at her. "Why?" "Because I don't want to leave." He looked uncertain. "You don't owe me anything." "I know." "Then why stay?" Rebecca smiled. "Because somewhere along the way I stopped seeing you as the man I was forced to work for." She reached for his hand. "I started seeing you as the man I love." Kwang's expression softened, but Rebecca wasn't finished. "If I'm staying, things have to change." Kwang nodded. "What do you want?" "My freedom, my career, my own decisions. I won't be your prisoner." "You won't be, and I need you to promise me that." Kwang held her hand firmly. "I promise." For the first time, Rebecca believed him. Then Kwang pulled her gently into his arms. Their first kiss was slow and uncertain, but filled with everything they had been afraid to say. For two people who had met because of a debt, neither could have imagined that their greatest debt would become love. After that day, everything changed. Rebecca was no longer living in the mansion because she had been forced to. She was there because she had chosen to stay. Kwang kept his promise. He allowed Rebecca to return to practicing medicine, and he made sure she had everything she needed to build her career again. But life with a mafia boss was never going to be ordinary. Rebecca slowly discovered that Kwang's world was filled with enemies. There were people who wanted his power, his territory, and everything he had built. One evening, Rebecca returned home and noticed something was wrong. The guards were unusually tense. "What's happening?" she asked. Kwang walked toward her. "You need to stay inside tonight." "Why?" "I have business to handle." Rebecca grabbed his arm. "Are you coming back?" Kwang looked at her for a moment. "I always come back." That night, Rebecca couldn't sleep. Hours later, the front doors finally opened. Kwang walked inside with a cut above his eyebrow. Rebecca rushed toward him. "You're hurt." "It's nothing." "Sit down." She cleaned the wound while Kwang watched her silently. "You know," he said, "before you came into my life, I never cared whether I survived." Rebecca stopped. "Don't say that." "I mean it." She looked into his eyes. "Then promise me you'll come home every time." Kwang smiled faintly. "I promise." Rebecca realized that loving him meant accepting his dangerous world without allowing it to control her life. And Kwang realized something even more important. For the first time, he had someone worth coming home to. If you're still following their journey, subscribe to Koriafrik Stories ***, because Rebecca's presence is about to change the most dangerous man in the city. Months passed and Rebecca's life became almost unrecognizable. She continued practicing medicine, while Kwang slowly learned how to separate the dangerous world he controlled from the home they were building together. Even Mina noticed the change. One afternoon, Mina called Rebecca into her room. "My son is different," she said with a gentle smile. Rebecca laughed. "Different how?" "He smiles now." Rebecca looked away shyly. Mina reached for her hand. "You brought happiness back into this house." Rebecca smiled, but not everyone was happy about their relationship. Kwang's enemies soon discovered that Rebecca was the one person he truly cared about. One evening, Rebecca received an anonymous message. It contained only 3 words. ***, leave Kwang now. ***. She deleted it, but the threats continued. Kwang eventually found out. "You should have told me," he said. "I didn't want you to worry." His expression hardened. "Rebecca, anyone who threatens you becomes my enemy." She stepped closer. "I don't need you to fight everyone for me." "Then what do you need?" "I need you to trust me." Kwang was silent. Rebecca continued. "I chose this life, I chose you. But I won't live in fear." Something changed in Kwang's expression. He understood. Rebecca wasn't asking him to protect her by controlling her. She was asking him to stand beside her. So he did. Together, they faced the threats, and slowly, the danger surrounding them began to disappear. Kwang had once believed love was a weakness. Rebecca taught him that love could also be the strongest reason to change. And 6 months after Mina's awakening, Kwang made a decision that would unite their 2 worlds forever. 6 months after Mina woke up, the mansion was filled with music, flowers, and laughter. Something extraordinary was about to happen. Rebecca stood before a mirror, dressed in a beautiful traditional Korean wedding gown. Her heart was racing. She thought about the woman who had entered this mansion months earlier, frightened and desperate to save her brother. She had arrived because she had no choice. But today, she was standing there because she had chosen this life. A soft knock came at the door. Mina entered with a warm smile. "You look beautiful." Rebecca smiled. "I'm nervous." Mina took her hands. "Marriage is frightening, but marrying someone you love makes the fear worth facing." Outside, Kwang waited. The man who had once been feared by everyone stood quietly, dressed in traditional Korean clothing. When Rebecca finally walked toward him, his eyes softened. He reached for her hand. "You came." Rebecca smiled. "I told you I would." The ceremony began. Their families and closest friends watched as 2 completely different worlds came together. Rebecca's American background and Kwang's Korean heritage were reflected in every part of the celebration. There was music, laughter, traditional customs, and heartfelt blessings. Then came the moment Kwang had been waiting for. He looked into Rebecca's eyes. "I once believed that power was everything," he said. "Then you came into my life and taught me that love is worth more than power." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. She held his hands. And you taught me that sometimes, the person you fear the most can become the person you trust the most. They exchanged their vows, and as they finally became husband and wife, Mina watched proudly. The debt that had brought Rebecca into Kwang's life was long forgotten. What remained was something neither of them had expected: love. The celebration continued long into the night. Rebecca and Kwang sat together surrounded by family, friends, music, and laughter. Looking at him, Rebecca remembered the first day they met. She had been terrified of him. He was a ruthless man with a dangerous reputation, and she believed that stepping into his world would destroy her life. Instead, it had changed her life completely. Kwang looked at her and smiled. "What are you thinking about?" "The day I came here," he lowered his head. "I scared you." "You did." They both laughed. Rebecca rested her head on his shoulder. "But I don't regret staying." Kwang gently held her hand. "Neither do I." Across the room, Mina watched them with tears of happiness in her eyes. She had nearly lost her life. But somehow, her illness had brought two people together who never would have met otherwise. Rebecca had entered Kwang's mansion because of her brother's debt. She had stayed because she found something money could never buy: a love that challenged her, a love that gave her courage, and a love that taught Kwang to become a better man. Their story was never perfect. There were fear, danger, arguments, and difficult choices. But perhaps that was what made their love real. Because love isn't always about finding someone without problems. Sometimes, it's about finding someone worth facing the problems with. Rebecca looked at Kwang one last time that night. "I love you." Kwang smiled. "I love you too." And beneath the warm lights of their wedding celebration, two people from completely different worlds began the rest of their lives together. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Koriafrik Stories ***, like this video, and turn on your notifications for more unforgettable African-inspired romance stories. Until our next story, remember, sometimes the person you never expected can become the love you never knew you needed.